You are listening to 93.9 Dublin South FM.
Broadcasting from the Dundrum Town Centre, this is Dublin South FM.
The time is for a Real Enemy clip, and I will play the Real Enemy clip by Sharad Zaidi.
Thank you, Mr. Zaidi, and greetings, dear listeners. Thanks for your comments and feedbacks, especially about the last week's program. So based on that, we decided to continue with our series called Real Enemy of India. Here, we'll continue to discuss about some earnest and consequential issues that threaten the very fabric of India. Interestingly, those issues are not even on the manifesto or agenda of the political parties in these national elections, the elections of 2024. Before we start, some housekeeping here. So I want to say with due regards to the honorable courts in India, any reference to the Indian justice system is based on publicly available information and general observations and should not be construed as criticism or contempt of court. So this disclaimer serves to ensure compliance with the principles of free speech and, of course, with due respect for the judiciary while fostering an open dialogue on matters of public interest. So, in the ongoing discourse about the real threats, one critical aspect that often finds itself under scrutiny is the justice system. So, the delivery of the justice stands as a foundation, upholding the rights and liberties of its citizens, of its residents. However, the journey towards justice in India, it is riddled with challenges that threaten its very essence and the very well-being of the population of India. So when we speak of justice, it encompasses far more than courtroom battles or the legal verdicts. It actually embodies a spectrum of rights and privileges that are enshrined in our constitution. And they range from equality, freedom of expression, women's rights, human rights in general, privacy, property rights. So in our daily lives, we often uphold these rights instinctively, only resorting to legal course when they are infringed upon, only in extreme cases. Otherwise, commonly people live in an uncontested and harmonious way away from the legal battles. Not every day people want to go to the court in order to contest the violation of the rights. As we all know, Indian legal system operates on a three-tier structure, which comprises of lower courts, high courts, and Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court serves as the apex body. So where is the threat? The staggering backlog of cases paints a grim picture. With estimated 5 crore cases pending across various levels of the judiciary, the justice system of India is grappling with an astonishing and overwhelming burden. And then compounding the issue is the shortages of judges, and particularly in high courts, where roughly 30% of the positions are vacant. So we have around 1,100 judges to be imparting justice in the high court. 330 vacancies are still pending. So this glaring gap between the caseload and the judicial capacity, it undermines, and it is clearly a failing. It undermines the efficiency and the efficacy of the legal system. Moreover, there are concerns regarding the quality of judicial appointments, like it is understood that inadequate vetting process and the absence of stringent criteria often result in inconsistency in the caliber of the judges in the lower judiciary. And then India has the collegium system of judicial appointments in higher court. Now that also warrants some kind of reform to ensure meritocracy and competence. And despite the faith of the population in the judiciary, the delivery of the justice office often becomes a lengthy suffering with cases languishing for years, if not decades, in the courtroom. So in a comparative analysis, the stark reality of India's judicial timelines, compare it with the European courts. The European courts conclude cases on an average of 16 months. United Kingdom, 6 months, about 180 days. Indian average exceeds 10 years. The Supreme Court alone contends with a backlog of about 70,000 cases. And this highlights the magnitude of the challenge. We should also be aware that most of the cases in Supreme Court, they involve the state and its authorities. So many times it is the constitutional bench also. So therefore, any delay in the delivery of the judgment in these courts, especially in the Supreme Court, it is consequential to the substantial population of the country. The point here is that there are just 34 judges who have to complete a backlog of 70,000 cases. What does 5 crore pending cases mean for India? Considering the 18-year plus population of India, it is about 96 crore. So that makes about 5% of the Indians in queue for seeking remedy and justice in some way or the other from the Indian courts. So that makes 1 in 20 Indians who are waiting for some kind of an outcome from a formal court, a lower court or a higher judiciary. Now consider that each litigant is consequential to 4 to 5 fellow beings. So then the affected number of Indians come to around 1 in every 4. So that's like 25% of the population. Thus, the repercussion of systemic failures, it extend beyond the legal technicalities, but to the human lives. Instances of individuals languishing in the jail for decades, that's another problem, the under trials. According to National Crime Records Bureau, 67% of total prison population is that of under trials. So there is a long waiting list for their cases to be heard. So in May of 22, in a typical case of Chandresh Maskole, he was acquitted by the High Court of Madhya Pradesh after being in jail for 13 years. He was not one of the kinds. There was another man from Bihar. He was acquitted of murder after 28 years in jail. So when he was arrested, he was 28, and by the time it went to the court and he was freed, he was 58. So that is one more life wasted. And similarly, there are many cases like these. Now, each delayed verdict, it actually represents a miscarriage of justice. It robs individual of their prime years, and it is a systemic injustice that gets reflected across the society. It reverberates throughout the society as a dysfunctional legal system. So when 2/3 of India's prison population comprises under trials, awaiting their day in the court, this is only breeding ground for unethical practices and abuse of power. It is an urgent requirement to address these systemic challenges and to fortify the court system, to expedite proceedings, and to bring about a robust justice delivery system. It requires a targeted system, and governments must say that within next 10 years they will bring the backlog to only 10% of the cases. So looping back to the original question as to why justice delivery system in India is an enemy of India, why it is threatening India. That's because it undermines democracy and rule of law. A robust justice system is fundamental to upholding democracy. And when the system fails to deliver timely and fair justice, it actually erodes public trust in democratic institutions, and it fosters a sense of impunity, and it weakens the foundation of India's democracy, and it makes it vulnerable to exploitation and manipulation. It is important that we stop social discontent and instability that breeds because of delayed justice. As we saw in case of Nirbhaya, it took 7 years from crime to the execution of convicts, and that too when it was done on a fast track court which was set up immediately after the public outrage. As we have seen, delayed justice is also a human rights violation because it translates into exploitation of the marginalized and the vulnerable population, people languishing in overcrowded prisons without trial. Importantly, it also undermines national security. How? Because a weakened justice system, it encourages the criminals. It encourages the crime related to terrorism and organized crime. It emboldens the perpetrators, and it is easy for them to compromise with law and the enforcement efforts. And therefore, the failure to address security threats swiftly and to effectively, it actually undermines the safety and security of the nation. We have a case of Kasab. It was on camera. The evidences were there, but still it took roughly 4 years to get to the execution of the convict. So when we say that the dysfunctional justice delivery system is an enemy of India, we want to highlight the existential threat it poses to the nation's core values, to nation's stability and progress and economic progress. And therefore, it's a must requirement for addressing these challenges and to reform the system in order to safeguard India's democratic principles, societal harmony, economic vitality, and of course, last not least, the national security. So dear listeners, we come to the end of this episode of The Real Enemy to India, and please continue to send your feedback and comments, and see you next week. Bye for now.
Going back to the Sharad's fantastic analysis of the judicial and legal system of India, they say that legality, the justice delayed, justice denied, that is the case. And you have heard the amount of number of cases, staggering cases. I didn't realize that it's so bad that crores and crores of people have not been, given the justice because their cases have not been heard. And of course, and the so-called lawyers who make, a huge amount of money from the clients, and they take the clients, cases, and you keep feeding them lakhs and lakhs of rupees every now and then in order to get your case up. And then you realize that, today's case is cancelled. The judge is not turned up. It's been postponed for another week or so, whatever. So what is that? So justice is an important factor of life. And you've seen the comparative, analysis in the UK and here in Ireland and Europe and America. Everywhere, the justice, it has to be swift and quick. And that's the only way to give a fair share of the, But in India, no, it's not the case at all. So when you're actually outside India, you really do see these are the pitfalls of the nation that you really have. You cannot actually see that while you're living there. Because most of the time, as Sharad said quite rightly, that people don't really bother until there is an issue. Regardless of the problems, small things carry on. Nobody takes legal cases right, left, and center, and particularly put up and shut up with the actual problems that they face in day-to-day life. But that's not the case elsewhere in the world. People do take a quick legal action and then try to, ramifications are sought and things like that. But this is a fantastic analysis which Sharad has put together. That's one of the enemy of India is its legal system. And of course, unless you do the justice, which we have inherited, let's face it, from the British system.
Everything's fine on 93.9 Dublin South FM.